Ag AM in Kansas is brought to you in part by Sure Crop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
Good morning and welcome to Farm Factor on Ag AM in Kansas. I'm your host, Conrad Cavis. Farming policies is a hot topic in today's country, and with the internet, more farmers and ranchers are spreading the word of agriculture advocacy. Recently, the Kansas Farm Bureau had their annual meeting in Manhattan, Kansas. One of the speakers was Debbie Lyons Blythe, who is big in the blog world in agriculture advocacy.
Hi, I'm Debbie Lyons Blythe, and I'm from White City, Kansas. Here at the Kansas Farm Bureau Convention, so I was one of the speakers today. And I talk specifically about advocacy and connecting with consumers. My bottom line is that we've got to make that connection and not just preach to consumers, but kind of answer their questions and have a conversation with them.
Debbie began blogging in 2009 to tell stories of what happens on a ranch and to answer questions for people who don't live in rural areas. She believes that the conversations are changing and growing since she started.
So back in 2009, when I first started blogging, I feel like that we were all about telling our story and just having a seat at the table and discussing specifically, the things that we're doing today. But I think that now we've got to do a better job of actually listening to what consumers want to hear and listening to what their questions are. That's not the easiest thing to do, and I totally understand that. But I think that by paying attention to what the consumer wants to know about, we can actually do a much better job of advocating and connecting with them. And my bottom line is that we are consumers too. I'm looking for another word for consumers rather than just consumer. I don't know really what to say, what to call them. But if we keep them as consumers, then it's producers versus consumers. And I really don't want that to be a difference. I feel like that we both have the same concerns. We're worried about feeding our family safe food. We're worried about making sure it's nutritious. We're worried about the environment. We have the same concerns. So I think we have to find a way to make that connection.
Turn to a Central National Bank Ag Professional. You'll be in good company. They'll help you track expense lines, manage variable input costs, assess ground agreements, pick a crop protection plan. These times demand ag professionals. Central National Bank. You could profit from what they know. Ag operations run better on Central Time.
Central National Bank. Money for life.
Member FDIC in your hometown since 1884.
This segment is brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Good morning and welcome to Farm Factor on Ag AM in Kansas. I'm your host, Conrad Cavis. Farming policies is a hot topic in today's country, and with the internet, more farmers and ranchers are spreading the word of agriculture advocacy. Recently, the Kansas Farm Bureau had their annual meeting in Manhattan, Kansas. One of the speakers was Debbie Lyons Blythe, who is big in the blog world in agriculture advocacy.
The easiest way to get involved in advocacy is talk to somebody in a grocery store. One of my favorite things to do is swing by the meat case in a grocery store and just see what people are buying. You'll almost always see somebody just staring blankly into the meat case, wondering what they're going to do with that cut of meat. And I'll just ask them, so what are you going to do with that cut of meat? What kind of a meal are you serving? What's your recipe? And sometimes they know what they're doing and they're fine with that information, and I don't go any further, but a lot of times they really don't know how to cook that specific cut of meat. They don't even know what it is. I've introduced people to the flat iron steak that they didn't even know what it was and how to cook it, and it's one of the best steaks that there is.
Debbie began blogging in 2009 to tell stories of what happens on a ranch and to answer questions for people who don't live in rural areas. She has found that there are many people involved in agriculture that are willing to answer questions, with many being farmers and rural Americans on blog sites and social media, helping to clear the air on farming policies and life.
So I think that starting with advocacy, it's just a matter of jumping in and doing it. Talking to people in a grocery store, talking to people specifically on Facebook, but you have to pay attention to Facebook. For the most part, everybody's friends on Facebook are just like them. And honestly, that's not advocacy if you're talking to them and specifically explaining what's going on your farm. Well, duh, it's going on their farm too. So we have to pay attention to who your audience is and try to truly curate your audience and get those followers and those friends that need to get the message. So that takes a lot of work, specifically on social media. And I think probably the best way to do that, to curate those followers, is to take part in some discussions, either Twitter chats or Facebook groups. If you join a group that is maybe a little bit outside of your comfort zone, the easiest thing is to join like a rural women or an ag group to talk to, but that's not the ones we want to advocate to. Join a knitting group, join a marathon runners group, join a Twitter chat that talks specifically about Thanksgiving recipes. And those are going on out there. Those are available for us to take part in, and that just shows consumers that we are the same thing, that we have the same concerns and that we can talk about the same topics. And then, oh, by the way, I raise the beef that shows up in the grocery store. I raise the wheat that is in your breads. I think that's really important, that we're able to make those connections.
Tar Waters has what you need for all seasons for around the farm and home. Working, hunting, growing, feeding, snow removal, even fun for the kids, and a service department with experienced techs to help keep your equipment in top running condition. Tar Waters has a huge selection and the best prices. Tar Water Farm and Home, family owned and operated since 1978. They have what you need.